All right, Control H this thing. And welcome everybody to Making a Tour, leveraging the tour module for a better user experience. I'm Dwayne, I work at Pantheon. This slide is lying to you right now because my slides are not up on my website because I forgot to post those. I think I actually made the post and just didn't make it public. Anyway, but I work at Pantheon. I'll get back to that in a second. And I like a lot of things besides tech. I take inspiration from a lot of things. If you've seen my previous talks, Emerald Tour in the world, you can find it on WordPress TV and Drupal TV. Now, thanks to Kevin Thal. I'm on Twitter a lot, so that's my favorite medium to communicate with my communities with. So please hit me up there. In fact, if you take a picture of me and tweet it, that would be amazing. MC Dwayne is my Twitter handle. And again, these slides will be up on my website after this talk when I'm not going to live edit in front of you. Before I move any further, I want to give a shout out to the people that employ me and make it possible for me to be here. Pantheon. Who here is not familiar with Pantheon? Not a hand went up for those people at home. But very quickly, we are a website operations platform. That is what we really see ourselves. Hosting is how a lot of people think about us. And definitely we accomplish the feat of hosting. But helping teams better communicate is actually at the core of why I want to give this talk. And that's one of the things that we have strong value at Pantheon, of agility, doing things quickly together and communicating easier. That's me. I'm going to talk about myself and what I did the whole rest of this talk. So I don't know quickly, like, who's in the room? Who am I talking to? So like, who here considers themselves a full-time developer? Awesome. Who here considers themselves like a full-time designer? Yes, got designers and developers in the room. That is a win. That is a win. Any project managers? Awesome. Anybody that deals with content? Awesome. So there's anybody else I missed? Any like business people in here, sales folks, or just owners outright that do everything, chief cook and bottle washer? Yeah, that's this talk I think might benefit you as well. So I'm going to talk about tours. But before I get to that, I actually wanted to share a few slides since I have your attention and they let me do this. The time I went to Thailand. I saw the second largest reclining golden Buddha in the world. What's that? I saw that too. Yeah, it's an awesome place. But I would have never found this on my own. I had this awesome tour guide who also took me to this train market where a train like stops literally 3 feet from a woman's head who's like selling mangoes and coconut and whatnot. And she bought me a coconut and we went to a floating market and it was great. And here, there's a lot of Buddhas. It turns out like 39,000 variations of Buddha in Thailand. It's probably closer to 40,000. But this is one where you can throw a coin into the belly button, and if it goes in, then Buddha will grant your wish. Nice. It's ridiculous. But that's on the green, it's in the Green Lung in the heart of an island in the middle of the river of Bangkok. Main river of Bangkok. And there, I would have never gotten there, but I had this awesome tour guide who literally showed me exactly where it was and explained all the cultural customs that were cool with it. And this is up north of Chiang Mai. That is the King's Pagoda. That is where his Buddha statue is, where he goes to meditate and do his thing. And this is part of the Himalayas. It's the lower part of the Himalayas. On the way there, the tour guide, this right here is the best picture I have of him, unfortunately. He took us to this village where we picked our own coffee and saw people like weaving traditional clothes from Thailand, northern Thailand, which is a really cool place. The Summer Palace, which has every architecture you can think of because that's how it was built. Whatever the king thought was cool that day was what they built. So there's like exact clones of Versailles here. There's a Japanese traditional palace right there. And First, that's this guy's name, First. He also took us to see this head that's growing, trees growing around it. It got decapitated like years ago and it just grew around it. So, but I would have never found this on my own. I would have never gotten there. I am terrible at taking trips in general, but here's like me hanging out with elephants. But how I got to see those elephants were this guy here, he taught us how to drive around tuk-tuks. So we drove around tuk-tuks to go play with elephants. I had an amazing time, but really I had an amazing time because I didn't have to do a lot of work to figure out what to do to have a good time. I mean, somebody actually helped me. And here I am editing a view in Drupal, and here's a tour guide literally telling me what that format even means. Okay, the last one wasn't Thailand. I didn't actually do any work while I was there, I'll admit. But that's really what we're talking about here today, is taking someone by the hand and saying, here's how you're going to have a good time doing this stuff together with us. I got inspired by a guy named Kelly Albright. Some of you might know him. Works for Last Call Media. And he gave a talk, then it's linked here in the slides, to Texas Drupal Camp, at Texas Drupal Camp. And he said this, and it really changed the way I thought about DevOps. And I'm a developer relations person at Pantheon. I work with DevOps stuff a lot. It's kind of how I think about the world. I play with Composer more than I probably should. But it really reframed, like, why are we doing the things we do in DevOps? And it should shorten that communication loop. In the same talk, he also said something akin to this. Not exactly, this is a paraphrase. But he said, like, if we can shorten that loop to be, you don't have to leave the interface to understand how I've built the thing, why wouldn't I just do that? And then he showed a tour of demos, which I had never, or a demo of tour, which I had never, ever heard of before. Turns out it's been in the core of Drupal 8 since it launched, and I've just never seen it. Turns out a lot of people are in the same boat as me. So hopefully this will be the same experience for you as it was for me, where I immediately just like devoured every document I could about it and said, wow, this is kind of amazing. And I see this is a very important part of the future of getting more and more people excited about Drupal. I already said that part. It's built on this thing called Joyride 2, which is a jQuery library. It's not super important there. It's actually a really fascinating story of how it got into core. This thing that you probably never heard about, that's super powerful, that's now in core. Control this thing. It's bugging me. Zoom, go away. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it. Control H, no. But you can go read this, the journey, Previous Next out of Australia. They actually have a lot to do with why it's there. And they wrote the story of how they got it in there. I realized this morning that I don't quite think I have all the pictures right, but go look up these people. They're amazing. A point in the slide is this was built by people like you and me. I think it's sometimes easy, less so in the Drupal world than it is in other spheres I work in and think about, where it's easy to forget that this was put in here for a reason by people just like us that went to some kind of gathering like a camp or a conference and said, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we did this with the code? And then put it in there because they had their own reasons to. And those reasons were literally to help their clients do better. So this is what Tour looks like. If you've never seen Tours, you can go visit the views as it logged into admin, go edit any view. And up in the corner, you get this little box that says tour. You click on it, you can go through this exact tour. And it will explain exactly how to use all the fields. It's right there. Just click on it, and it's just there. Unfortunately, this is the only one included out of the box. When you open up D8, this is the only one. Unless you know it's there, you're not going to look for it. And unless you're just happen to notice it when you're editing a view, you're probably not going to be aware that this ability exists. So that's the downside. Good news is they're really, really easy to write. Very straightforward. It's basically just YAML, which is a very complex statement in itself, and they're very customizable to your audience, which after trying to write a generic set of them for core modules, I think that's why they don't exist for everything, is because they are customizable to your audience. And who's the general audience of Drupal? Ooh, that's a really hard question. A very hard question. How I speak to someone that understands Twig deeply, and how I speak to a content editor aren't probably going to be the exact same way. So those tours do need to be customized to your audience. So it's up to you as the developer, up to you as the designer to demand that these things get put in there, up to you as a project manager to say, look, if we can't explain this to our user in the tool itself, maybe we should rethink this. Maybe we should actually start explaining this. Quick note, today's talk is meant to be a jumping off point, an explanation, and maybe some tools of how to do this. But the docs are literally the docs. So you're not gonna replace those. So go check them out. The Tour API overview is what you want. You can go through a whole maze of links to get there, but it's faster to just go there. So all you do is you write a YAML file and you're done. That's it. That's the entire talk. I realize it's a bit overwhelming just to show a giant YAML file. So the next part of the talk, we are going to walk through that. I actually got really overwhelmed with the API doc itself. And I went through it 4 or 5 times. It was at Design for Drupal last year. I sat down and someone actually explained it to me. And then I had my aha moment. It's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. So what I did was I wrote that thing you just saw, but I'll get back to that. Because it turns out there are currently 2 ways to write these tours. I went through the process of the first one and the one I'm more familiar with, and I think, and I'll talk about it later, it's a little bit better overall for understanding what's going on under the hood. And as a developer, it'll make more sense to you than just leveraging the tour UI, which is probably what you'll give your business folks or your content editors to, like, here, you need to explain this thing that you're doing. Just use this. At least that's my view on the world. It could be completely backwards. I don't know. So I took what was given to me in the API doc and transformed that into a template. A template that, at least from my point of view, makes it a little easier to remember what I was doing. And then I attempted at DrupalCorn with Dan Ficker, who now works for our team at Pantheon. Go Dan. He and I sat down and tried to write a bunch of generic tours. And that's where we came to the realization, like, wait a minute, we can't just write a general tour without just copy and pasting the docs. Man, what do we do? And then we kind of stalled, to be honest with you. But this tour template came out of it, and I'm very, very proud of it. Tour files, in the classic Drupal sense, are named in a fun way. Tour.tour, the name of the tour, .yaml. I said tour ID, and I'll get to what ID means in a minute, but this is basically whatever you're calling it, but it's the machine name that you're calling it, whatever you want to call that tour. So if it's user add or people add or adding a user or whatever you want to call it, Drupal doesn't care. It just needs to be a unique thing. So that's what we'll walk through this template. I'm not going to read it to you, but if this is the point, if you want to play along and crack open a text editor, you can write your own tour for anything while we're talking about this today, or at least pull up all the things to pull all the data from to write these tours as you go along. So I see this thing as in 5 parts. You could disagree with me, but that's how I kind of view it. So we need that ID. We need to say, I'm suggesting you use the module and the specific page that you're trying to edit. That's a very easy to remember thing. That's very easy to look up and say, oh, the user add page. So mine's called user add, or double routes, because that's literally the page that we're on. So double routes would be the name of my ID. You got to tell what module you're using. Now with Drupal 8, there's a lot of things included in core, an awful lot, that either made it into its own routing as an individual component or is sitting in systems, our system. I don't know of a good quick way to see which is which other than just looking them up. But if you can't find the module routing, just system is what you're going to use here. We'll get to routing here in a bit. That'll make more sense. We need to give it a human readable name. Why not tell it the same thing we told the ID? Just keep it simple. And then language, I don't know if you can use other languages for this. There's a suggestion you can, but that's all it is. Unfortunately, tour documentation is a little limited at the moment, which is something we could improve. We could definitely get in there and figure it out. Given that Joyride itself can be used with any language, German was the example that I kept running into with Joyride itself. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to, but again, I've never seen documentation that you can. English is just the default. And then we get to routes. Routes are fun. Let me move this part of Zoom. That doesn't really help because my slides are right there. All right. So routes are not addresses. This took me a while to wrap my head around, actually. Routes are the machine-readable route that points to an address as part of the JSON or YAML that is the route. So you have to tell it what route to go pull that path from or match the path to the route. If you want to reuse a route, want to reuse a tour over 2 pages, I got a slide for that later. You're just going to give it as many routes as you want. You can use the same tour again and again and again and again over anything. In fact, theoretically, you could write one giant tour for the entire site that would work only when those IDs are present. But again, we'll get to that. And we got a whole section about finding routes. So if you're like, what? How do I find my routes? We'll get back to that. And then there's the next part of the YAML is writing your tips. In tours, any tip or thing that you actually want them to read, part of a tour that they actually read, is called a tip. The first one should be an introduction. It should just be a modal that pops up and says, hey, this is the page you're on, and this is what this tour is going to tell you. So it's very, very straightforward. I think introduction's a generally good naming convention. Couldn't find any documentation to say yes or no. It doesn't really matter as long as it's unique. That ID inside of tips is different than the ID for the tour itself. This is the tips ID. Just needs to be unique. Plugin is going to be text. In Drupal 8, they decided text was the only plugin they were including. Joyride can support HTML, video, just about anything else you can throw at it. It's pretty flexible. I've never seen an implementation in Drupal that actually used anything but text, but theoretically you could do it if you wanted to hack it. Drupal proceeds to do it. Again, label isn't the human readable name of the thing. Now label is actually the title of the tour itself. So I'll show you an example later, like when it actually says, here's the, actually, what am I saying? I'll show you an example later. Where is my page? Here we go. Wow, that was really small. Okay. So this part here, that is the label of my tour for my user to edit his own user account, or their own user account, I should say. And then body is, well, the body, the actual text you put in there. There is no limit to the length of this that I could figure out, and I couldn't break it. So I just could throw paragraph and paragraph and paragraph in there, and it would just work. Also, and I realized I should have put this in here. The body itself can contain any HTML basic elements you want. So, you know, your hrefs and your links and even pictures. Picture loading, I never actually tested now that I'm said that out loud, but it should be able to work. And then weight. Weight is what order it happens in. 1 is 1, obviously, and then 2 is 2. So then you're just going to explain the next field. But there's a couple things that are different on here. That first one was just a modal that just pops up in the middle, like I showed you right here. This is just the first part. It doesn't point to anything. It doesn't need to. It's just there. Second one, all the stuff's the same, like ID, plugin, label, body. Then we got location. Where does this actually appear in relation to the element it's pointing to? So for this next one, credential password, I have this below, the current password. So I have this below where the current password sits. You do left, right, top, bottom. Those are the 4 you got. And if you don't have a location, it's like, I just want a modal pop it out on the screen without doing anything. Just hanging out. Weight, of course, what order it appears in. And then attributes. So the introduction of attributes. This is where it actually points. So on this page, I just do the classic inspect element. And I can see that that current password field, wow, this is really small, has an ID of edit current pass. If we're using IDs correctly, that's the only place that should appear on the whole screen. So Tours knows where to point to it with the data ID. You could use data class as well. What I discovered in messing around with Tours a whole bunch is we were not consistent in Drupal at all of using IDs. Good or for bad, I'm not gonna judge anybody on that. I'm just saying that's a fact. So sometimes you get to a situation where, hey, I gotta just point to a class because there's no IDs present and I don't wanna hack this thing. Which is a reminder, if you are building your own modules, IDs are your friends. They are gonna make everyone's life a little bit better in the long run because it's a unique thing you can actually anchor to on the page. In fact, for one-page websites, Nerd Summit had a one-page website with everything you wanted. You could link to individual parts because you could just throw the ID in the URL and just that would be what pops up when you saw it. I thought it was a really clever idea. Power of IDs. And then as many steps as you want, /5, you just do this over and over again for as many tour tips as you feel like writing. And that's it. for what that YAML contains. So I wrote a few examples. Again, me and Dan Ficker wrote a few examples. And then we had that conversation of like, well, this is too generic of an audience, but we made all this available. So you can go to GitHub, MC Dwayne/Dwayne-Tours, and see everything I'm talking about. Look at examples and that template there to base yours off of. Talk about finding routes. One of the more fun parts, one of the more adventurous parts that actually helped me learn a lot about the internals of Drupal 8. I don't know a lot. I'm not really a Drupal developer, I'll admit that out loud, but it helped me understand a great deal more than I did when I started about how it works. So there's two ways to go about that, manually or double module. Just like you're writing a tour, you can do it manually, or there's a module to help you manually, or there's a module to help you. Just go to your module/module.routing.yaml, contrib or config, or contrib or custom. Thank you very much. Brian went blank for a second for some reason, but it should just be there. If you're writing your modules the correct way, that should exist. Again, if it doesn't, you're probably just going to be in systems. So you go to core module systems, systems.routing, and you'll probably find it there. And then once you're open that file, just Control F or search however you search. And the easiest thing to search for is the path you're actually looking for, the path of the page. So in this example, again, kill this. This is on user edit. So that's what I looked up. I tried to find some variation of that. Now the way Drupal makes that URL, there's the number 2 right there because it's the second user. So there's another reason why paths aren't used is module, or the route can account for that. And the route is always the route, no matter what that URL actually resolves as. So another fun thing I learned along the way. And then that's all you grab. You just grab that route, and that's the route you use in your tour. I already said this. So here we go. It's a good example. So here, if I'm writing a double routes tour for the next thing I'm about to show, double.route_info is my route for that. But I found that by finding that path and then just Control F it and the config. I like looking things up manually because I already have access to this. If you have access to the code, you have full access to all the routes. It's that easy. And this works no matter what you've done to your site. The routes are going to work, or your site's not going to work. It is a little complicated, and it's trickier looking certain things up than you think it should be. But again, I see it as a learning experience every time I crack open a route, and I highly recommend it as the best way. But not everybody's got time for that. That's where double kicks in. Double has a routes function. Who's ever used the double route function for anything? That's what I thought. I can't find another use case for this, to be honest with you. There probably is one, but again, not a full-time Drupal developer. I haven't run into it. But it's pretty cool they built this in, because you can just go to double routes, if double is installed and activated, and type in any part of the query you're looking for, and it will. That's not a true search. That is a filter, because that route list is the full route list. It goes all the way to the end. So just filter what you're looking for, what you think it is, and then it will show you. Oh, great. And there's that path manipulation. That config diff is always going to work, but that path is going to change depending on what you're doing. Same with diff collections. So again, an important reason why route, not path. It's faster and cleaner. I ain't gonna argue that. But it also makes things kind of a black box, where it's just, okay, I plugged it in a thing and it gave me a thing. Don't know why it did it. If you don't care, if your user doesn't care, yeah, just use it. But if you're like, I really understand why and how and where this is really located, do it manually. I can't recommend that enough. If you got the time. If you ain't got time, double all the way. But then you have to also maintain double. Not that that's a hard. Who here uses double on all their projects? A handful of people. That was actually more than I thought. Double is awesome when you're first developing them. It's a great beginner tool. I've always viewed it as a beginner tool because it's very helpful. Multiple routes to get back to this. So for instance, adding a person and editing a person in Drupal is almost the exact same menu. It's off by one field. So you can reuse the same tour for multiple screens that have a similar overlay. And again, theoretically, you could use one tour for your entire site with every route in it, and just, it will only show the IDs that are available. So if I look at adding or editing a user on the adding a user, that first field that I happen to be on, this doesn't exist, so it just skips it. It doesn't know it's there. If I'm adding a user, there's actually another field that's not on here that gets added in. So that's why I have 4 steps when there are 5 on this one, because that's showing the other route, or the other page options. Playing with that will make more sense. Again, can't teach you everything about this today. But once you've named it, now you have to put your tour somewhere. If you've hand built this, which is what we've done so far, you got to take your tour.moduleid.yaml file and put it somewhere. The docs all suggest putting it long-term storage if you're building your own modules, and config optional. I don't agree with that. I think you should just throw it straight in config. Why not turn it on? It's already turned on. It's like tours is turned on by default. Why not just put it in config? But that's what the docs say or suggest. You're gonna have to create that folder if it doesn't exist. And then the docs actually say something like this. I shortened it a little bit to fit on a slide. But that's not how I learned to do it. Like theoretically, yes, this totally works. But if you go to single item config import, you can just copy paste the contents of your tour. Then it actually doesn't matter what you call the file. It's just that's for your sanity for later when you're making your version controls happen. But this will create that YAML file itself in config if you just paste it in. Hit import, make sure you select tour as the config type, and away you go. And then tour just works. And that's a lot of work. Not gonna lie. The first time I did it, it took me like a day to write half of a tour and finally get to a point where it was functional, but it didn't have all the content in that I wanted. But then again, I didn't have my example code. So today it takes me like a few minutes to handwrite them. But yeah, there's a GUI, because the faces that I showed earlier, most of those people maintain this thing, or they're working on a thing, I should say maintain because they're still working on it, called the Tour UI module. Or you can just throw this in, say, I want to make a new tour called this, here's the module it's for, here's the routes, and then just start adding individual tour pieces. The docs actually say all this, and when you first read it, it's like, whoa, that is a lot of steps. There's a lot to do to make this thing work. In all reality, no, it's actually not. It's this. It's install and edit, or install and enable, which you're going to have to do if it's a module. Then just go to that interface, add the tour, specify it, add your routes, then hit add new text, because text is the kind of plugin it uses, and fill in the blanks. That's it. So just fill in the blanks. Literally where it points to things. Oh, I have the wrong screenshot here. Embarrassing. This is the first time I'm giving this talk, everybody. Apologies. It's supposed to show the other screen I was talking about. And then it itself, the tour UI comes with tours that will explain how to use the tour UI, which is kind of brilliant. Just up in the admin screen, or the toolbar in admin, and I'll get back to that in a second, but just click on tour and it'll literally tell you, walk you through using it. Oh, there's the screenshot I was thinking of. Again, first time giving this talk, people. Where I just write, there's my label, there's the weight of it, data class or ID or modal. Those are my 3 options. Then what location, and then body of it, including some more instructional stuff at the bottom. And then once you save it, it automatically does the config for you. You don't have to worry about it. It just automatically puts it there and you're ready to go. Just a Drush CR is probably not going to hurt. It never does on development. So I find that sometimes I need to do it, sometimes I don't. I don't know why. I sometimes do and I sometimes don't. The bad news of this is it has never been a stable release. I think in part because Tours doesn't get talked about that, or Tour doesn't get talked about all that much. So it's not like a rush that we have to fix this, like kind of like media and layouts, not top of tongue for everybody. But the team that builds this could sure use your help. There's a literal call to action at the bottom of the Tour UI page that tells you how you can get involved. I would love to see this become stable, because when I composer built the website that this is, I didn't realize I had stable as the minimum. version and prefer stable, and that broke things. And it took me a while to figure out why it was breaking, and then I realized finally, oh, this never ever came out of beta. So flip to beta, you can use it, or you can work on it and make it stable. We can use your help. I say we, but really them. I'm not actually touching code on this yet. And then we need to enable our users to actually be able to use it. Like, so this is my test user, named test user. Clever name, I know. And the only reason I have access to this is I gave this user permission to two very, very important things. First, the toolbar itself, because that is where tour lives. Tour lives in the toolbar. It's not necessarily an admin function. It is a toolbar function. So I have never seen a Drupal site with toolbar turned on for an anonymous user. Might exist, but for authenticated users, that is at your disposal. Just turn it on. And then they will have access to those things they have access to that you've also given permissions for. And then you have to actually give them access to the tours themselves. You as an admin and all your other admins automatically get it. Like, it's hard coded on. I don't think you can turn tour off actually, unless you disable the module. But once it's turned on, you unlocked it. You can now explain all of your UI to anybody using any part of your site that has access to that toolbar that can hit that button that you'd like. And just to complete the thought, you will probably need to remove tours if you are prototyping things. Like, oh, I want to see how this tour looks like now. Oh, wait a minute, I shouldn't put it on the left instead of the right. Unfortunately, you have to flush the config. The fastest way I found to do that, and the way that, actually the only way I know actually how to do it, there's probably another route. If anybody wants to talk about that in Q&A, I'd be happy to learn. But just drush config list to see what your things are, and then drush config delete for that particular tour. It's the same name as the tour YAML, but without the YAML at the end. That easy. The rest is up to you. Like, I just wanted to expose this idea publicly that if you have users who are like, I don't understand this back end, you have a tool already in Drupal 8. If you're not using Drupal 8, you can still use Joyride. It's not as slick. There is some Joyride tour for Drupal 7 module that somebody wrote. I think that's the name of it. Anyway, but why wouldn't you do it? I love this quote too. I found this when I was looking up rolling up my sleeves. Or roll up your sleeves. Because yeah, you could worry that my users aren't going to understand this, or you can tell them how to use it without them having to leave the page. And I think that's very, very, very important for the future of us using this tool. There's not a lot of official docs around Tour that I could find. If you can find more, please inform me and I will fill this in more. Drupalize Me did a really good talk on it. Previous Next article about this is from 2013. So a lot of the information is a little bit dated. And there was that cool gist of somebody built the same thing I built, just their own version of it that I found way after the fact. So otherwise I just used theirs from the beginning. And there's a video tutorial. Again, it's dated, but it's accurate. Nothing about tours has changed since we put it in. And that's the end. You can clap along with the card and I'll put these slides up after this talk, after I get out of here, so I don't live edit in front of you. And we'll kick it into Q&A. Right there.
The tool seems like a really cool functionality to have for developers, for designers, for editors. I'm wondering, it seems like it could be some interesting applications that are more sort of visitor directed than a visitor website. And the word that comes to mind when I see Tour is wizard. It's basically like a wizard is explaining. So is there any work being done, or do you know anyone that can work packaging the Tour module, make it sort of generally available as part of like the overall design for visitors?
Short answer, no. I've heard one other human being ever actually talk about Tour, and that was Kelly Albright. And he was talking about it more in the context of new modules they build and to explain it to other developers. Then the user aspect of it is a wide open future that I agree, it should be done. But that goes back to that toolbar access. There's no reason you can't turn toolbars on for anonymous visitors. And I don't know how, but you could probably, never done it, but theoretically, programmatically trigger it upon load, so the tour is the first thing they see. That would be really annoying if they come back to that page, but I mean, we're bouncing light off chips. Like, we can definitely figure it out. But I agree with you. If we want to make the user experience better, giving a guided tour of anything you want, it's at your fingertips. You just got to figure out how to do it. You were first. You beat him to this much.
Do you know how accessible the tour module is? Like, does it focus automatically for screen readers?
I have never tested it for screen reader functionality. I'm going to be honest with you. And I got it loaded right here. I got my sound up. With Option and Escape. Why is Option Escape not working? It should be telling me something. My screen reader. Did I turn this off? Did an update break this? It's Option Escape, right? Anybody? How do you turn on screen reader functionality of Mac? There's a hotkey for this. Nah, in the past it was that easy. Okay, my bad. But the short answer is I actually don't know. Given that I haven't seen any active work on Tour itself. Like, the last commit for it was like 2014. I don't think they've improved it, but given that Joyride is a jQuery library, I'll stop talking and say I don't actually know. That's something I need to research, and I will know that by the time I give this talk again at Design for Drupal. But thank you for that.
I was wondering about so if the field ID is an attribute or a class.
Yeah.
Is the field ID not enough for? I didn't quite understand.
Oh, okay, yeah. Happy to go back there because there's a lot here. So absolutely, I'm surprised that was the thing you got lost. To be honest with you.
No, that's the only thing I was like.
Okay, so attributes are the thing that the tour points to. So the field ID or data class is what you could use. So what was your question? Sorry.
I was wondering why the ID if there's the field ID. And
Oh, okay. This is not an official doc. This is literally my my doc. You have to enable label every or fill in every blank. So the ID needs to be, and this is just my suggestion, the ID needs to be unique identifiable on that page out of that tour. So if I'm only pointing to one element with that ID, for me, it was easier to think of it as the field ID. And I probably should update that to element ID because when I first wrote this, I was only thinking, and honestly, this was a change in thought, like through the process of doing all this, just pointing to fields that people could interact with. The idea of I could point to things that they can't interact with that still explain something really hadn't occurred to me, but that actually makes more sense. Or pointing to generic things like, hey, this is an area where you can do things with a modal over it, or just point to that particular element. But that's what that meant. So this was my language, so sorry about that. But that's what I meant. Just give it a unique name, probably related to this. Yeah, unique identifier on the page. So that's why those are the same. That was my thought process when I built it. Yeah. Also, this theoretically could be a search replace, fill in the blank across the whole site, across the whole YAML. Just going individually, changing just this one. But everything else would be like the module, like fill in, route would just fill in for you, all that good stuff. It's trying to be helpful. We'll see if it is. All right. About 5 more minutes before they're going to kick me out of the room. Back there.
So how do you see this helping I make tours and I develop them? Where is my best leverage going to be in terms of project management? I want to be able to hand this as a tool to both my team and to users who are going to be editors with limited access, but this helps them. So what else do you have?
I can give you a use case that actually came up for me. We have 2 new designers at Pantheon. And I've had to explain, and a new developer who started. And I've had to explain to all 3 of them how the back end of Drupal works 3 separate times. Where I could have, if I have access to tours, which we don't for a number of reasons, mainly because we're on Drupal 7. If you look at Pantheon, it's not really a secret. You can dig and find that yourself. But if I could sit down with one person, like, this is how this works, and like get that feedback immediately of like, oh, that makes sense or that doesn't, write down what works. I never have to sit down and explain that to anyone else ever again. And every developer and every designer that ever touches that same edit screen ever again would have my explanation that we worked out the first time. And we can improve it over time, iterate on it over time. That's the use case I have in my head. Again, there might be 1,000 more.
I just think it's complex editor interface.
Oh yeah.
Right. Because you just can't do editor or you have questions afterwards. Let's answer them. Let's add them. That's what I hope to do.
Because my editors change more often than my developers.
Sure. In fact, that's this. I don't have a add content tour built. I should have built one, but I did not. But yeah, if I can add, okay, this isn't a complicated workflow, but add article, I could totally build a tour that says an overview of like, here's the standard that you should be applying with links to like, go read these docs for way more specifics, but for the time being, title should conform to these standards. The body field, do this and this and this, and don't do this, and make sure you're in this mode. Like actually point to this ID. I think that's an ID for this. Let's find out together. And say, all right, make sure you're in this. Yeah, edit body 0 format too. There's not a screen. If it's got a route in Drupal, you can write a tour against it. And everything's got a route. And everything has at least a class. If there's a Drupal page that has no ID and no class, wow, I don't even know what that page would do. It would look ugly, but you could use modal. You could still use modal for that. You could still use no label and just have it float out in space. Any other thoughts? Well, go forth and build your tour, people. Sit down with your users and find out what they need to know, and then go build them tours. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming to this presentation.